Gretel and Hansel is a new horror film that has come out in this month of January, directed by Osgood Perkins, son of Anthony Perkins, original star of the movie Psycho. This movie is obviously another retelling of the Hansel and Gretel story that we have heard many times before. Two kids, brother and sister, wandering around the woods on a journey with each other, find this house, middle of nowhere, run by a witch, and she has some food. They're desperately hungry, so they stay, but then they learn some things about her that are a little weird, a little creepy, a little suspicious, a little witchy. I know what you might be expecting. I've said this a lot throughout this month whenever I review a movie, is that the biggest warning sign was that it was coming out in January, but I was actually really looking forward to this movie in particular, and you might be wondering, Jackson, why is that? It's a horror movie coming out in January, this is a bad sign. But honestly, I didn't really think that mattered overall, because the director, Osgood Perkins, I actually have been really admiring lately. He made a movie for Netflix called I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House. Not everyone is going to like that movie if they see it, but that was one that I honestly really dug. And his other movie, The Black Coat's Daughter, mwah! Love that movie. It actually really surprised me how much I actually adored that film, and it gave me a lot of inspiration after I had seen it. It made me want to write something dark and twisted like that. So when I heard that he was the one that was going to be behind this movie, I was honestly really excited to see his take on it. I thought he really had the potential to make something really fantastic out of this, even though he's not the one writing it like his other two films, he's just sole director. I thought he could still really bring something interesting to the table. And did he? Well, let's talk about it for a bit. First off, I really did admire the design of this movie, the costume and production design. They really do capture a grim, dark essence to this world, and I thought that was neat how they were able to visually make something really appealing. There's a lot of witchy horror movie imagery that takes place, some of it in the form of scares, and some of it is some dream sequence stuff. And I thought it all looked really good, and it was all visually appealing, and some of it genuinely kind of did get under my skin, not in a, like, it's so horrifying kind of way, but just I really did dig what Osgood Perkins was doing behind the camera with this, because the cinematography made it look great, and because you already have a great production design setting up all these sets, it got you more transportive into it. And even the dream sequences, they weren't like the most obvious, like, we're having a obvious dream sequence, jump scare, oh, character jolts awake and everything's fine now because they had a really dumb jump scare dream. It wasn't dream sequences like that at all. It was ones that felt natural and actually tried to support the narrative, which is obviously for the better if you're going to include a dream sequence. Alice Krige, who played the witch, I thought did a really great performance. They gave her a lot of great stuff to work with as far as her dialogue and just how she chewed up the scenery whenever she was on screen. She did a really great job playing this character. And Sophia Lillis and Samuel Leakley as Hansel and Gretel, they did a really good job with it as well. They had a good chemistry with each other. Sophia Lillis is obviously a great actress. She's proven that with the It movies, and she leads this movie fairly enough. Where the faults kind of start to come in, though, is that their characters I don't think are the best written, and it doesn't help that the rest of the story feels really underdeveloped as well. Unfortunately, I walked out of this film feeling very disappointed. This is definitely, even though 2020 has already started, this is definitely going to be one of my biggest disappointments of the entire year. When it comes to these two characters, the intro with them feels too rushed. It feels like they're kind of jumping from place to place with very little time to let you breathe and live in this world, in this town with these characters. So certain things kind of happen way too quickly for you to process it, and these two characters are just kind of off on their journey already, and it doesn't really give you enough time to get you knowing them as people beforehand. So when stuff happens later on in the movie, you feel like a pretty big disconnect with them. Like there's nothing really going on that much with Hansel, except he wants to be strong, but then they kind of drop that in service of him just kind of being there. And Gretel, they do something new with her that could have been neat and could have been a cool idea to expand this story more, but unfortunately, they barely give enough time to develop it beforehand. So when they kind of reveal, like, hey, this is something that's happening with this character, it feels kind of out of nowhere. It feels just weirdly kind of flung at you. And it's kind of hard to process it when it goes on too quickly. Like, they reveal it, and then before you're like, wait, where was this built up beforehand? Why is it just kind of coming up now? The movie's just kind of like, move on, we gotta keep going. Because the movie is fairly short, running at like an hour and 27 minutes last time I checked the IMDb. And that's fine if your movie needs to be that length and you've told your story and you're done, that's great. But this movie needed to be longer. Because as I said before, they really do kind of brush over a lot of stuff near the beginning that you should have expanded on a bit more to get you knowing these characters, to get you knowing this world, to have it feel like there's a natural flow of events. There's a moment where they meet this huntsman, and maybe he's going to be an important character to them. Not really. He's just kind of offering some help, and then they're off again, off on another journey, and they never mention him ever again. It doesn't really thematically offer up any reason to be there other than, well, they were being chased by something that was legitimately kind of spooky, but then he fixed it, so it's fine. One thing they could have done to maybe help this sense of rushness to it is don't rely so much on character narration, because Gretel narrates the fuck out of this movie. There was really no reason for her to narrate anything. There was nothing that she was saying that I couldn't just catch on to by watching the movie itself. Just the most unnecessary information just so the audience doesn't feel stupid and they know what's going on, but that's just treating your audience like we're dumb children. Because of that narration, they also use it earlier on for Gretel to say, well, after this happened, we just moved on to this next scene, and then after this scene, we moved on to this next scene, and that's just another way they kind of kept things going too quickly. And if they had cut out the narration and just relied on what can we do with these characters talking with each other, what can we do with just looks they're giving, that could have probably helped flesh out the more natural side of the storytelling a bit more. But unfortunately, it does kind of play out kind of like you're reading a fairy tale, like in a book, which the movie, it opens up with someone kind of giving a fairy tale story. And I'm like, okay, it works there because that's the opening of the movie, and they need to establish this story because it's important later. But then to have your main character continue to do it when you're past the point where it's necessary, it's not working. As much as I thought Osgood Perkins did the best he could do as far as the filmmaking side of this, there's even a couple cuts that they make that just felt a little jarring. There's one part, just to name an example, where the witch is like pouring some milk right by a chair where Gretel is sitting. Then they make a cut to like another angle, and she's not where she was the last time. Like she's now like off the camera, and it's like what she was like right there so obviously, and you cut to a different angle, now she's just gone, so there's a couple jarring kind of cuts they make, like a shot of the ceiling and then wide shot of Gretel for like 0.02 seconds, then it cut to a close-up of her. Is like there's a couple cuts here too that are kind of lacking, and I'm a big fan of the way you've made your other movies, and for the most part, this is a well-made movie, except for these things here. By the time the movie comes to a close, I didn't really feel any emotional impact for the characters. They go in places that didn't really have much build-up before, and at times I was just kind of questioning, wait, why did you do this? Why did she do this? Especially if this was the case, why did she do this specifically? I can't really name it without spoilers, but there's just a lot of underdeveloped things in this movie, but they could have been really great. That's the big issue that I had with this movie that makes it so disappointing, is that I expect this from other January releases. I expect this from a movie like The Turning, or even Underwater, or even Dolittle, to fall flat and not exceed what potential they could have. But this is a movie made by a guy who I've really admired, who has clearly made better movies in the past. But this one, it's not like The Grudge, where that movie has a great director behind it, but it doesn't feel like he made it. You can see the Osgood Perkins fingerprints throughout the movie as far as how it's made. It has a really great score. Forgot to mention that. It has a great synthy score to accompany a lot of the great visual filmmaking they do, a lot of the great shots, and to accompany the great production design that you're looking at. But where this really feels lacking as far as the other Osgood Perkins movies is the story, the way the characters are treated. And I think maybe if he had a screenwriting credit, because I saw the end credits before walking out, it was not him. Maybe if he wrote the script, maybe it could have turned out much better. Maybe if the budget was higher than $5 million, they could have been given more opportunities to do other scenes. So as much as I really admire the technical aspects of this movie, as much as I really want to give credit to the actors who are doing their best, unfortunately their characters kind of fall flat. Even the witch, they kind of explain some things about her that I was kind of questioning and I didn't really fully understand. Like at first it starts off like very simple, like, oh, okay, I get what they're doing, but then they say something about her, and it's what I was saying earlier, where I was like, why did you do this specifically if this was just... why? There's not enough time given to this character development. There's not enough time to live in this world with them, to grow with them, to have a natural feel with them as the movie progresses. When they get to the witch's house, even that starts to jump ahead, and you kind of feel like they haven't been there that long. You feel like there isn't really a connection with the witch, that they're just kind of there because there's good food, and they just stay because why not food? and they do work around there. You don't feel like there's something else to the witch that they've grown to, that the witch has persuaded them to stay because she's got this other side that she's trying to seduce them with, but there's that evil one. It's like, no, there's barely any of that. Like, there's just, it's always creepy, but they don't acknowledge it that much, and that made the movie more frustrating too. I've got to give Gretel and Hansel, unfortunately, a C+. I was really looking forward to this movie. I was really excited to see it when the promos were coming out, and Osgood Perkins, I'm still going to be excited for his next film, because I think he's a really talented filmmaker, and I want to see more of his work. Blackcoat's Daughter is amazing, and I want to see more from that creator. Unfortunately, though, this job could have definitely been great with him attached. There's just a lot of creative aspects of it involving the screenwriting that really hold it back, and I think maybe if they open the door for him to come work on the script as well, instead of just giving that singular credit to that one guy, then maybe it could have turned out a lot better. It could have turned into a better, moody, atmospheric, grim horror film like The Blackcoat's Daughter, but unfortunately that's not really the case here. It had a lot of potential, it had some talented people behind it as far as the crew and the cast that you have, but unfortunately what's offered for them to work with doesn't really match their talents. But what did you think of Gretel and Hansel? Leave in the comments below what you thought of it, and as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.